Do not change the station. What you're hearing is coming from the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode of... Wait a minute. Receiving a new transmission. What is that? What am I seeing? It's big. It's really big. Oh my God, it's so... Welcome to Season 6 of the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast, the biggest sci-fi podcast in the galaxy. Join our crew, Adina, Brian, Cris, and Steve, as we travel the Milky Way looking for the best that science fiction has to offer. Make sure you're strapped in tight, because we're going to have a lot of fun talking all things sci-fi. Stay tuned to this channel for the next audio transmission.
I'm sure the topic around the water cooler these days is how does the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast come up with ideas or of subjects to talk about. Now, some people might think it's the Topic-O-Matic 5000 subject creator, but if it only existed. Nope. Most of the time, it's from our own little noggins do we come up with these ideas. But sometimes, just sometimes, it comes from outside sources, like today's discussion. Now, my good friend and co-worker at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, Brandon, we were discussing the recent release of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, a movie which we both had seen. And I recommended to him to watch the 1968, the original and classic, I might add, Planet of the Apes, starring Chuck Heston. Being that this film came out 25 years before he was born, yikes, he could not say enough about how much he liked it and then added, you should talk about it on your podcast. Well, Brandon, your wish is granted. And now we will discuss this iconic film from 1968 and the film that launched 4 sequels that followed it. One Tim Burton movie. 4 much better tellings of the story. That's how I feel. 4 new films that tell the story of smart apes and dumb humans. And oh yeah, believe it or not, there was a TV series that lasted only 14 episodes. But before we begin, folks, let me introduce our non-simian members of the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast. Adina, you may ooh or ee if you like. It's okay with me.
What about an ah-ah?
Ah, that's why you're a physicist. They say ah-ah. Brian?
Don't make me come in there, you human. Hey, it's Brian from Ohio. You
Cris?
can't trust adults.
No.
You can never trust adults these days.
Cris?
Ooh, ah, the clock is ticking. That's actually a song I was listening to like 2 days ago.
Reminds me of another song. Do you guys remember? Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, bing,
Bing,
bang.
That's what I was thinking.
Bing, bang,
Yes.
ooh, ooh, ah. The witch doctor song,
The Witch Doctor song.
sung by the same man who did all the voices for Alvin and the Chipmunks in the 1960s.
Very
David
nice.
Seville.
Did not know that.
There's your little bit of trivia. And me, I'm Steve Merkin in California, who is moderating today's podcast. So now let's discuss Planet of the Apes. But before we begin, if you haven't seen this film, you're in luck. Because we will be, and a new word, spoilering. Is that right? Yes.
Spoilering.
Great. We're allowed
I
to
like
invent
it.
words. It's
Spoilering the heck out of this film that is 56 years old. It is available on Disney Plus for the low price of free. So if you subscribe to this streaming service, that is. But that is,
Was it available on Disney Plus?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's where I watched
yes.
it. I watched it on
Hulu.
Disney.
Hulu, which is now part of Disney Plus.
Was it Hulu? Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
which is part of Disney Plus. But so I wanna say something here because
Sure.
if anyone in the audience hasn't seen the film and also is unaware of the major reveal, really go see this film because I feel like this is one of those really fun reveals that if you
Mhm.
actually
All-time classic.
don't know,
Yes.
like
Mhm.
see it, and it might put some other pop culture references into perspective when you do, but if you don't be spoiled. Like
Yeah, definitely
it's
go watch
very
it.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
very rare that you can really do that. And I'll get into, I'm like really actually upset with my older son about this. So
okay.
we'll talk about that when we get to the reveal.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this movie is, of course, the co-writer of the script was Rod Serling.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
for
I
those
forgot
of you
about
who
that.
know how great this man is and how he wrote 96 episodes of The Twilight Zone, his signature was the ironic ending of an episode. Oh my God, it's a cookbook. You know, I mean, something of that, you don't expect it. And then bam, he always hits you at the very end and leaves you wondering, wow, I didn't see that coming. So yes, we're going to spoilering this by talking about it. So we're going to mention and talk about the ending because for those who have, well, I guess that's the first question I'm going to pose to our illustrious panel is, when did you first see it, or was this the first time you saw it, like my good friend Brandon?
Definitely not the first time I saw it, but I can't tell you when, because it's one of those that between VHS in the early 80s or, watching on cable in the, like, I know I'd seen it more than once when I was a kid, but I can't tell you when the first time.
For me, I was a kid sometime, made, edited for TV. Although I don't remember anything outlandish about this film from the made for TV version, or edited for TV, excuse me. So I was a kid. This is the first time in years I've watched it, though.
Okay, excellent. Cris?
Yeah, this is my first time. It's one that I've heard so much about. It's we'll get to the spoiler thing, but it's like, it's definitely something where I think you'll have more fun if you don't know the ending, because I already knew about it. Yeah. So it's just like, I was curious to see how will I feel about it, having heard so many references to it, and people just talking about it. But lots of thoughts though.
Well, that's the one thing that's interesting about this film, is that it is suddenly in many ways ingrained in our pop culture. So that even you haven't seen it, you probably have already experienced some of the great lines that came out of dialogue that came out of this movie that have, befilled it. And I even sent, one of the things I did in my notes to the group was to send them the link to a episode of The Simpsons that made fun of this. I mean, it's part of that pop culture that is, what it is. So let's start with the beginning. What did you think of the opening sequence of the film? Because to me, I had to pause it and turn to my wife Elaine and said, I remember how much I loved the opening sequence of this film.
Now, when you say the opening sequence, to how far in?
Right up until the splash landing in the lake. The whole
everything
sequence,
they go to sleep, they wake up, they find that Stuart is dead.
But also the camera angles and shots, the way they shot the camera turning up and backward, turning around, you felt like you were riding on the nose of that spacecraft as it's coming in for its landing.
Yeah.
It was really ingenious, Steve, how they filmed that with the camera movement, because they didn't have to show the spacecraft crashing itself. They just showed first person kind of view, like you're watching out the window of it, which probably saved them a ton of money on special effects because of that.
I don't know. I mean, they're
we don't ever see the whole spacecraft except the nose of it out of the water.
Yeah, but looking through the window, I mean, like looking through that window couldn't have been a an easy thing to, what's out there. I don't know. I feel like that it's probably not necessarily more economical, but I don't know.
But and the camera had to be on a swivel of some type, because as it's flying through the desert region, I mean, it's revolving, it's turning. You're I mean, you're inside. You feel like you're on a ride. And I remember when I was a kid and I saw it, I was just so impressed with that sequence and the sound of everything. The sound was really good. Sound effects they used for it traveling. It was remarkable.
I do think watching it now, the outside the window when Charlton Heston is or Taylor, the character Taylor, is talking and injecting himself with something. That sequence does not hold up well. That was quite cheesy from the version that I watched.
You mean like with
the lights out
the
in outer
Starfield?
space? Yeah, in
Yeah.
outer space.
I thought
It
that
wasn't
was
like
cool.
terrible, but it was. It was like I remembered it looking a little better, but I was a kid when I saw it first.
Yeah, see, I find that interesting because like this is kind of how I felt for the whole movie, where I thought, okay, I'm going to watch this. I know it's a classic. It's 68, but I like Star Trek that came out in that time in 2001, so I wanted to give this a try. But I was worried about how gripping I'd find it. And I found within that first like little bit of dialogue, I was in. I'm like, I love this conversation around the fact that okay, it turns out the scientists were right. We're in the future. It's 1972 spaceship time, but we're in like 2263 or whatever it was in real time.
He goes to sleep, before Taylor puts himself over. Yeah.
Just his delivery of like the very calm, I've accepted my fate, but I'm a little bit bummed out, but I'm accepting it. Just, I love that tone and the delivery. And then we'll get into the rest of the movie where I found I liked that aspect of it. But yeah, the intro for me hooked me because I'm always worried. I'm like, how long is it going to take for it to get interesting?
Yeah.
But yeah, I was hooked within like a minute or so.
That's awesome, Chris. And I was too. And so was my son, who is 7 years old. And the credits start to roll, and all of that stuff. And he goes, this is interesting music. I'm hooked already. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I got to, he could care less, but I got to say, hey man, Jerry Goldsmith wrote this. He's my favorite Star Trek composer, and he wrote.
I didn't know it was composed.
I skipped over the credits. That's
just
the beauty of it. Yeah. That's we'll get into the music soon enough. But what made me laugh with and my wife watching is he smoking his cigar in a spacecraft, and then when he's all done, he puts it into his pocket of his flight suit. Like, well, I'll just save this for when I reawaken, how many years I'm going to be asleep, because my cigar will be waiting for me.
Yeah.
Not really a safe moment in space travel.
Obviously, they did not consult with the astronauts at the time, like some movies are doing today.
Yes. It's a pure oxygen environment. Loves a cigar.
Was there a reason they wanted it to be in 1972? Was it just to be slightly more futuristic? And people were like, oh, maybe in 4 years we can maybe get away with that stuff or something?
I would have pushed it a little further into the future if it was me, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of my kids even asked, like, why is he smoking?
Yeah.
And my wife just said, well, they smoked a lot back then. They did.
Yes, they did. It also plays up to his rugged character. He smokes a cigar, while he's expounding on life, the universe, and everything as he's getting ready to put himself to sleep for who ends up being centuries and centuries of time that goes by, folks. But now getting into the pop culture of the film, and I will tell a true story how it affected me. 1978, I'm in a car crash, and I split my head, and I'm making a little motion right here on my forehead where I had like a 3 to 4 inch gash in my forehead. Taken to the emergency ward, sewed up, bandaged up, got home. Week later, bandages come off. My brother looks at my forehead where the stitches are, and immediately the first thing he says is, "They cut out his brain, you filthy animal." And I went, "Oh my God." First thing out of his mouth. And because of this Landon, who ends up getting a horseshoes cut in his forehead, and that's what I got from my brother. So, but even so, there are so many lines in this film that have become part of our dialogue. I mean, Adina, it's a bad day at work, and you just want to yell, "It's a madhouse! A madhouse!"
A bad day, just any day at work.
Throw head back, lean against wall. It's a madhouse.
So, I mean, does any of these did any of the dialogue as you heard it, especially yourself, Cris, for seeing it for the first time, did any spark a familiarity to you before?
So there was a couple of lines. So the madhouse thing, I didn't even know that was from Planet of the Apes, because my association of it's a madhouse is from a Seinfeld episode when Elaine is trying to take an IQ test at a cafe, but there's too much going on, and so she's like, "Oh, I couldn't do very well because it was a madhouse or something," and then Jerry makes fun of her for that. And then in the movie Tropic Thunder, there's a line where it's like, "Damn dirty heathens," and I'm assuming, and then hearing "Damn dirty apes," I'm wondering if they were just referencing or
get your stinking paws off me.
Damn dirty ape. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a couple of those lines where I'm like, oh, that was from this movie.
I didn't remember the teenage kid at the end who helps him, the nephew. That was obviously kind of hippie dippy,
don't trust anyone over 30.
Aware.
Don't trust anyone over 30.
I love that. I just saw that, all that stuff Charlton Heston said, don't trust it.
I want to know. So talking about references, and I don't know if this is if Voyager had a very separate idea, but like watching Planet of the Apes, I'm like, oh, so Voyager basically just ripped this off when they did the dinosaur episode, where there's one where they encountered alien species that has evolved from dinosaurs, and there's this one scientist who's trying to prove the dinosaurs evolved on Earth and that there were humans after. So I can't remember what it was. And they don't want to believe it, but then Chakotay tries to help out the scientist, and they're like, "You're going against doctrine," and he doesn't. He doesn't
have to watch that again.
It does sound. I gotta.
But it sounds like maybe they were just like, "Let's take Planet of the Apes, but let's make it dinosaurs."
Well, it's interesting that line from the film where he says to don't trust anyone over 30. There was a movie that came out the same year, 1968, called Wild in the Streets, where teenagers don't trust anyone over 30, and how they take over the world from from the adults. So that whole concept was very big, was about not trusting anyone over 30. So I'm interested.
Well, that Star Trek episode, Miri, which was in the same time frame, and it wasn't about necessarily trusting. It's like they lost all the adults, so they didn't have adults. So then. And when they were losing the adults kind of went crazy. So I guess it is the same.
Yeah, so it's kind of all tied into it. Another thing I brought up here was now that the script was written by Rod Serling, and there was an episode of Twilight Zone called "I Shot an Arrow into the Air," where a mission is sent with multiple crew members. They crash land on a deserted area. They think they're on a distant planet. Slowly, personalities come forward of not trusting one another, one wanting to survive over the others until they find out that they've crash landed back on Earth. And they don't realize it until the very end of the episode. Again, the Rod Serling, ironic. Oh my God, those are telephone poles. We're back on Earth. We never left the place. And oh my God, I can't. So, that's.
And you didn't know, folks, that was the reveal.
That's the reveal, kids.
Just said it. It was Earth all along.
Yeah, it was Earth this whole time.
My kids were shocked. They were absolutely shocked.
So
what do you mean they were on Earth?
See, this is what I have to vent about. I really have to vent
we need
about
to hear this rant. I want to hear this.
This is
vent away, Adina.
So now, first, partly my fault for not involving probably Frank from the beginning of the movie, but just things conspired, and I couldn't watch it all in one sitting just because of life this week. So when I sat down to watch the last half hour last night, before recording, that was when Frank was with me. So he didn't see the whole movie; he's just seeing the last half hour. And he's not getting engaged. He's only doing it because he has nothing else to do, and he knows that we're going to watch something else after it's done. But I'm like, pay attention, because this is the kind of, they're getting into the goods, to me, some of the good stuff, and I of course know how it's going to end. And he's like, "Mom, tell me how it's going to end." I'm like, no, just enjoy, just watch, just enjoy it. And I frequently have had this thing with him where we're watching something that I've seen, and he's trying to bug me to tell him what's going to happen. I'm like, no, just enjoy it. Just watch, just shut up and watch. Well, anyway, apparently in those few minutes, he snuck a look at his phone and looked it up.
Oh, no.
So when it actually happened, he knew. And I'm like, I mean, I was very, very disappointed in my offspring.
A rare opportunity in film these days to be truly, totally surprised and shocked.
Yeah.
It's one of the classic all-time shocks in film history.
Yes.
It absolutely is. And it's done so well, too. And it just, and I love how the movie just ends.
It just ends. There's no resolution.
Yeah.
Just
there it is.
Well, and it's great. I mean, really, and this is where I think the film holds up very well in going through the whole thing. Every point, so what I was looking for as I was rewatching the whole movie was like, are there any other hints that it actually was Earth? Like, because they just assume they land there. They assume they're on an alien world. They just assume it. They, boom, and then there's nothing to contradict that. Everything plays into it.
Yeah, it makes sense that they would assume they were on an alien planet far, far away.
Yeah.
And Charlton Heston even had a theory on which planet, or at least which solar system they were in, or whatever.
That was a half theory. Well, that was a half theory because when his colleague pushed him on that, he's like, "Yeah, I don't really." I was like, "That's just a guess." So he didn't really, and which was really funny because like a couple times in the movie reminded me of the Next Generation episode Attached. When at some point when Crusher and Picard are walking, and he's like, "Let's go this way," and then Crusher's like, "Wait a second, you don't actually know."
So good, yeah.
And Picard's like, sometimes as a leader you have to show confidence, and that's exactly what Charlton Heston's character was doing throughout that.
Here's my problem with them not knowing that they were actually on Earth, because anyone that has any knowledge has either been to or seen any of the several different national parks that they were walking through, they should have said, "Hey,
okay, so
looks a little," but
Brian,
at the same time, though, we also know there was upheaval, right? They were hoping to start over in essence. And unfortunately, they only brought one female with them. Poor lady. Three guys. What in the heck? So
some of that dialogue was definitely a little dated and cringy. But no, I can completely understand that if your brain is expecting this is you don't believe this is there's nothing in you to tell you it is.
Oh yeah.
So you don't expect it. So there's familiar-ish terrain, but nothing that screams this was this is the Colorado River or whatever.
Absolutely, well, that's the thing, Brian. Looking at this, where do you think they filmed this? Because they don't list it at the end of the movie where they shot this movie.
They shot it in parts of Utah. The lake they landed in is Lake Powell.
Oh, it is.
They shot some in, I believe, Nevada.
Okay.
They shot some
Colorado
in California.
River.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we see some of the Grand Canyon, frankly.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about going to Arches National Monument in Utah, where you have really most remarkable plateaus and so on there. So yeah, you were right. You could like this looks familiar, but again, you might assume that if you go to another planet and you're going to have erosion, you're going to have valleys and stuff, and you're going to assume already, well, this can't be Earth. So it just looks familiar.
It absolutely never occurs to them, and I think that's totally fine, which makes it still. Yeah. So for anyone who hadn't seen it, and I think it's probably the newer generations who might not even might not put the two and two together with the pop culture. Like my son has seen the Simpsons episode, I think, a couple of times, but he had there's no way for him to have known where that comes from, right? So there's a whole generation of people out there that might get this reveal, and I want them to have this reveal because you have to deal with a little bit of the cringy stuff. Mostly around some of the dialogue of Heston's character.
Yeah.
But if you can get past that, because recognize it's 1968, and that's just unfortunately the way things work.
That's just how they spoke.
That's right.
Beyond that, it was great, and the dialogue with the apes was just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what really grabbed my attention. As a kid, I didn't, I just thought it was cool. And by the way, the makeup still looks fantastic for what it is.
Yeah, that was going to be just another point of discussion. Talk about what everybody think about that?
But the discussion in the courtroom, all through was just masterful. I mean, they're tackling so many issues that were starting to really bubble up in their time, especially we begin to see that in the 70s in particular. Talking about war, talking about racism, there's all kinds of philosophical and religious undertones to how they're talking in all the things. You can't
question doctrine. I mean, that comes up a lot of places today. This is still very, very current.
Yeah.
What was it like? That's what was so interesting. What was the one person's role? It was like chief science advisor, but also in charge of
protector of the faith. Defender of the faith.
Yeah. I'm like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
What a great job with that.
No conflict of interest there. Not at all.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. And again, they did lots of little tidbits, like when the three judges are sitting on their table and they do the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil image. Those are light little touches, or when they're questioning about, why does Taylor, aka Bread Eyes, why is he doing these things? They go, human see, human does. I mean, they had a lot of fun with that dialogue, which again, you start like thinking, is this Earth or not? That this culture is kept alive. But you're right about the unveiling. They did a great job because you see them walking along this foreign, desolate. Then they see the scarecrows. Like, why is there scarecrows there? And then they get to the water. And, footprints. Why are there footprints there? And then I love the line that Charlton Heston uses where he says, in 6 months, we'll be running this planet.
Yeah.
Because he already assumes that they're the smartest people on the planet.
No prime directive for them.
I tell you what, my kids were like, why are we seeing their naked butts?
You see, kids, I get that. But here's what bothers me more.
Rated M for mature audiences only, kids.
Before Chris goes, I just want to say that could quite possibly be one of the most terrifying things. You're on an alien planet, you're swimming naked, and all of a sudden you realize someone is stealing your clothes. That's a nightmare scenario on any planet. I don't care who you are. Hey guys, it's Brian with the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast. We are at Trek Long Island 2024, and I'm here with a new friend, Shannon, and she owns and operates Sewn by Shannon. That's SEWN, and she has an amazing booth of stuff. I've been looking at it the last evening and today, and so is everybody from the BIG Sci-Fi. And we're so impressed and excited about Shannon's work. We wanted to introduce you, our listeners, to her and give you a chance to possibly buy some of her amazing stuff that she hand makes all on her. It's absolutely incredible. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here's Shannon. Hey, Shannon.
Hello, thank you so much. I have enjoyed sewing for 40 years now, so I'm not new at this. I have my business Sewn by Shannon. I am on Etsy. My business name actually on Etsy is Pinona Lay. But if you put into the search bar Sewn by Shannon, you will see my Hawaiian shirts come up on the search. And you can choose those shirts in sizes small all the way up to 3XL. I will have some of my items at Star Trek Las Vegas 2024, as well as a couple more East Coast shows. I will be at Rhode Island Comic Con in November, and I will also be at Terrificon in August at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. And she's got stuff like sleep mask. She's got Christmas stockings, cup holders, bowl holders, tissue packs, those little mini tissues you send your kids to school with. She's got bow ties, hair scrunchies, you name it, she does it. She's got amazing shirts, and check it out. Don't miss it. Sewn by Shannon. Thanks, Shannon, for hanging out with me.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a lot of seeing what I've seen them do in a lot of the 1950s, 60s movie. They're on an alien planet and they take absolutely zero precautions.
Yeah, really.
Mhm.
Like
Oh,
so they
yeah,
just
like
jumped
our,
into the water. Like let's just
yeah,
get taken
I
into
know
the water.
precautions.
Why isn't he using that hand pistol he talked about?
Mm-hmm.
They said they had
But-
one gun. Do you ever see it? I don't know.
Well, I think
Do
they
they
got
have
stolen with all the
towels?
goods.
Do they have any plans for drying themselves off? That's what really
It
bothered
was
me.
it was
Okay.
sunny. It was really, really, really sunny. It looked hot
is
and
that-
sunny.
but-
Yeah.
But is getting dried off by the sun the same as
The
putting
best?
on I don't know. I just feel like I need a towel when I
I
go
feel like if
swimming.
you're an outdoorsy-ish type, it's fine. Like I don't think that's like
Okay.
that's yeah.
I'll
yeah.
buy that.
Well,
I'm just
well.
like, but also test the water quality. It's
And-
like
Yeah, yes, that
Test the
bothered me
water
more.
quality.
like our
or
other
like-
friends.
Oh, well, the same
The
thing. Like
astronaut
when they
Monkey
land,
Man.
they land in the water, and he goes, "Did you test the oxygen? Like, what difference? What are we going to do? Hold our breath for
Right,
the rest
right,
of our
yeah.
lives? It's
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
just, whatever's out
Also-
there is going to be whatever we get."
I gotta say too, I was taken aback by this. That the scenes where where they catch up with the other humans and they're eating from the fields.
Mm-hmm.
In that the chase scenes when the monkeys come
Mm-hmm.
to get them, that was still pretty good. That was like my
Yeah, they
kids
did a
were
good
on the
job
edge of
with
their
that.
seat, and I
Mhm.
remember
Yeah.
going, "Wow, okay, what is going on here?"
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine seeing that for the first time, especially original audience. That was quite chilling. I mean, that was oh my goodness. And then you finally get the reveal of the apes, and that was all like a wow. That was good
Mhm.
stuff.
I
Yeah,
can
I
tell
I
you
really-
remember
from
go ahead. I'm sorry, I keep interjecting. I'm sorry.
no. I was just going to say
I'm so sorry.
the fact that I saw it in 1968. Yes, I remember experience all those things of the surprise reveal and all that. It
Remember-
does. Mhm.
Remember the next or the newer film that was it the 2000s or late 90s with
Mhm.
Mark Wahlberg, just
Mhm.
also
It was
titled
like
Planet of the
2001.
Apes. Okay, I'm
We
just
don't
gonna
talk
say
about
this.
that. Don't talk about that.
I don't think it was. It's not the best, but it wasn't bad. I mean, Mark Wahlberg. What do you?
Okay.
Well, so what we did, that reminds me what I want to say. So I really regret not bringing Frank and watching the whole thing with him. I really wish I had done that. But after we did finish it, we bagged whatever other plan we were going to have to watch something, and we started watching the 2011 Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that one's really
Ah.
good.
And
They're
we
good
got
movies.
about 40 minutes in before it was like at bedtime, and I had to say,
Mhm.
no, we'll watch the rest of it. And I'm not sure. I don't think I had seen that before. I don't think I'd seen any of the
Yeah.
newer ones.
Mhm.
That was actually pretty good.
It's very good.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, they
very,
did a good
very
job. That.
good. And and again, without transitioning away from this, but we did go see the latest Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, so we
Oh, I
had
wanna see
watched
it.
Rise, Dawn,
I heard
and
it was
War.
really good.
It's very good, and
See, I want to see them in order now. Yeah.
you have to watch them in order
Yeah.
because it is a progression,
Mhm.
and it's a different way that humans devolve and apes evolve in this particular film that is more relatable
Mhm.
to what we just went through a couple of years ago with a virus. So
Yeah, well,
it's
Brian,
it's very well done, and Andy Serkis you can see his face in the leader Caesar.
Yeah.
Like,
And
but
then War for the Planet of the Apes and is I really enjoyed that one.
you
in particular.
that is very good. That is really
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So,
but I was gonna say
uh-huh.
an interesting, that classic line that Charlton Heston got to reveal when they netted him finally in the middle of town and
Mhm.
get your stinking hands off me. We see that in the Mark Wahlberg film done by Ving Rhames, or no, what's his name?
I don't remember because I
I don't
put it
know.
out of my
and
mind.
Ape says that in the
Mhm.
Mark Wahlberg film.
Oh.
As they're chasing humans, they say that Mark Wahlberg kind of reaches out and touches his leg, and the ape kicks him and says, "Get your stinking hands off me."
Doesn't
I'm
have
gonna
the
look
same
it up. I'm
effect.
gonna look it up.
Doesn't have the same effect as the reveal to the apes that there is a human that can speak.
Mhm.
And that screws up their whole philosophy, even though they already know that there is a speaking doll somewhere in a
Michael
archaeological
Clark
dig.
Duncan. Michael Clark Duncan.
I need to look up.
It's got Paul Giamatti. Come on. Tim Roth, fantastic in the film.
Mhm.
Helena Bonham Carter. It's got a ton of great actors.
It does. It has a great
Chris
cast,
Christopherson.
but it doesn't improve upon
So
what was
I know-
originally done.
I know at some point in life
Agreed,
I did
agreed.
see the rest. I had seen the rest of the original series, but I'm not sure I remember all the details yet. So I kind of also want to rewatch all. I want to rewatch
I'm
the whole
tempted-
franchise. Maybe skip the 2001, but I want to rewatch everything else.
I kind of
Am I-
want to watch it too because I was looking at some of the summaries. I'm like, oh, this looks interesting.
Well,
Am I-
kids,
See how it
What-
plays out.
Well, kids, when the 5th of the original series of Planet of the Apes movies came out, I went to a theater in downtown Los Angeles and saw all 5 in succession.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
at the theater for half a day. It was glorious. I mean, we didn't get to watch the last one until like about 10 o'clock at night, but we saw all 5 together, and
It's a lot of popcorn.
it was a lot. The first movie, perfect. The second movie, kind of weird. Third movie, huh? The fourth movie, each one is kind of like its own progression. But to me, the newer 4 films do a better job of progressing the story than those ones did. It was
I've never seen
original
them
ones.
because my dad said, "Don't bother. They're weird."
they
So
were weird.
I've never seen any of the original
It
besides
makes
the
it sound like
first.
weird is a bad thing.
Well,
Yeah,
again,
weird is what we
Weird is not a
can
bad
for
thing.
in this
Not always. I'm
podcast.
not, that's not, just making a general statement. I wasn't saying weird is bad all the time.
I recommend you watch them if you want to see
Well-
Beneath the Planet of the or Battle of the Planet of the Apes or Escape from the Planet of the Apes or Planet of the Apes. Please do. Go right
Well, so
ahead.
let me.
Which
I have
one's
this
Planet
memory,
of
and
the
tell me
Apes?
if this memory is like
So
is
I
it
Sure.
accurate? What were there a group of humans that actually could speak but were deliberately not speaking because they knew that something would happen to them? Or am I completely not remembering something, making something up in my head?
In the
I don't know why I'm
2001, that's
thinking
No,
true.
in the old stuff.
in the
old-
original, in
yeah,
the original,
series.
Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the second film,
Yeah.
there is a society of humans that live underground
Mhm.
in the subway system of New York,
Mhm.
where they pray to a nuclear bomb. They're all radiation victims. They're all disfigured faces. They're mutants, whatever.
Mhm.
They're separate. And of course, at the end, they do what they're supposed to do with humanity.
Okay, but can they talk?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so maybe that 'cause
And-
again,
and-
I
and-
feel like I remember there being some that can talk, but they won't talk around the apes because
In the second film, Charlton Heston is at the very beginning. He's gone. He's replaced by Joseph Franciosus, I think, the actor who now plays another spacecraft arrives. Hey, what do you know? And there's a blonde American on there. What do you know? And he takes over what Charlton Heston did in being the
well, but that's
Hollywood
space
made
nymph.
everybody blonde and blue eyes for crying out
Mhm.
loud
Yeah.
back in the day.
but it makes sense that there would potentially be other astronauts making that same, So
Right.
if Taylor's ship left in 1972, it makes sense that
Mhm.
maybe they send one in 73, 74, or whatever,
Sure.
and it makes sense that they basically wind up following the same trajectory and have a similar
which is what they do.
ish. Yeah, and I can completely buy that. I can buy that.
It's the third film that it starts off on a really weird premise that the
Okay,
apes
so now
are
I do want to.
anyway. Yeah,
I
and
wanna
Apes
watch
are time traveling.
I
There was a
recommend
time travel
watching
one.
them. The second one, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, very good movie, very exciting, very interesting, very creative. It just kind of devolves from that point of view. But again, we're talking about the original and still the greatest Planet of the Apes, 1968. So let's talk about the music, Brian, because that's your favorite subject.
Yeah.
And you
Music was really good.
it is and I think you agree, Brian, when there is no dialogue and there is only action and you have music that supports that action, that's a great soundtrack. And I think this is one that does that. Do you agree?
Yes. It was different. You felt like you were on another planet because of the music. I think the music aided that
Mhm.
perspective that we're on a different world. And so that was brilliant. Also, for lack of a better word, the music kind of sounds animalistic. jungly, but also futuristic. So there's a lot of rhythmic stuff going on, but weird rhythmic instruments and things. Some of which are synthesized, but also you get kind of that synthesized stuff that Jerry Goldsmith was so famous for introducing into his music. So it made you feel everything. It really did.
It also sounded a lot like original series Trek, specifically if you look at like season 2, and if you look at the episode A Private Little War, it has a lot of the same. It's a piano, but it's like lower keyed piano that they use a lot. And it was like really any action scene they would have that, and I always thought that was really cool. The music I found. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris. Finish up.
I was going to say, the music I liked, and I also just liked that even scenes where they weren't doing anything, the music was really intense. So it's like you could tell something was about to happen, more so than I think in like modern movies.
Well, there's a percussion sequence when they're running along, and it brings me right back to the motion picture where you see the Klingon ships being attacked by V'ger, and you have that kind of a sequence in it. So I mean, that's it. You have abilities as a composer, Brian. I think you agree that you carry over to other films. You can hear that
every
sequence.
Composer has something about how they write music, what sections of instruments they love. James Horner, who did Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. You can hear similarities in instrument sections he likes to use, even in Titanic,
Spider-Man, The Amazing.
You can.
Amazing
every
Spider-Man
composer has that. In Goldsmith is the same way. I can almost know I'm listening to a Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack, even if I don't see his name in the opening credits. I have been right 9 times out of 10 of
for me that's Michael Giacchino, who did Trek 2009. And anytime he does a movie, I can be like, oh, that's Giacchino.
Yeah.
Except for If, which I saw last week. Which
did
very
you see
strange.
it? What did you think of the movie?
So Dylan and I, we enjoyed aspects of it. We thought it was fun to go and see, but we felt like it was just missing a lot. Like it just, there wasn't enough there.
It didn't get a really good rating on Rotten Apples, and I'm too bad Tomatoes, because I love Ryan Reynolds. I think he's hilarious. I think he's really a multifaceted actor, and I was hoping it would be better than that.
But it got a great audience score, which was interesting. Really? So Rotten Tomatoes, it got like a 48% critical score, but then I think like an 87 audience score.
That's because
it's interesting.
They love Ryan Reynolds. He is hilarious. He's very funny, and I think.
But he's also not in Planet of the Apes.
He would make a good Charlton Heston character.
He'd make I think he'd make he would do he wouldn't make a good Charlton Heston. He would do a good job at Charlton Heston's Taylor. He'd make a good Taylor.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm not a. I'm
Adina's
sorry.
attacking me tonight, guys.
I'm sorry.
I don't think she was attacking you. I think she was attacking
I'm attacking
your
Charlton
dad's
Heston.
comment.
Yeah. Well, yes, I was attacking the dad's comment before, and then I'm attacking Charlton Heston because he's not. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of things that are cringy in like everything that Charlton Heston has done.
He's a manly man. He's a manly man, and I think that's what he's always come across, from Ben-Hur to Moses. I mean, he's played such iconic characters that
are very cringy today. But I want to say something about the music, because this is like the weirdest, because I kept something kept, like hitting me as familiar. And what I think it is it sounds a lot like some of the opening sequences to, I don't know if any of you guys have ever listened to much of Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
But like some of their synthesized stuff, like some of it just sounded like not identical, but like that's what I think it is. And I got to.
Interesting. I now I've got to listen some Emerson, Lake and Palmer, because I loved it.
Especially the album Brain Salad Surgery, I think is the.
Oh my gosh!
Am I thinking of the right thing? Am I?
I don't know, but you just brought up a memory from the 1970s. It just came bubbling back up again. I haven't heard that album name for decades.
Yes, Brain Salad Surgery.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So listen to that.
Okay, Guys, should we listen to that in the car? No.
We could.
Yeah. Anywho, back to Planet of the Apes and back to what we're talking about. When we mentioned earlier about the makeup, the newer films are purely digital. The last 4 films, when you watch the movies and even in those, from Rise to War to the latest one, the graphics have gotten better. The different types, the chimpanzee, the orangutans, the gorillas, got to be more like, my God, these look like they're actually real animals. But in that one, they were working purely on makeup, which made it very hard for the actors to move their mouths, to get the facial expressions that we're used to seeing as actors. But did it still come across as believable? Could you really see their expressions, or were you doing it yourself? Were you injecting those expressions into it?
I think they did it for the time. I think they did a decent job. Trying to watch the lips, I'm like, okay, you could tell it wasn't quite there, but they did a reasonably good job. But the thing that struck me is like that they had to ride horses a lot. And I'm like, I just can't imagine what you're going through when you can barely see. You're wearing all this makeup or this prosthetic thing on your face, and you have to ride a horse. But I think overall they did a good job.
Yeah,
if you look closely,
if you look closely at the eyes, like the makeup was actually far removed from their eyes. They blended it really well, at least down on their cheekbones. Up high, their foreheads probably protruded more. But the mouths were the most problematic. Now, the actors did such a lovely job with their eyes and with their vocal inflections and all that stuff that you could easily overlook it. Your willing suspension of disbelief is working on all cylinders here. The part where we see the makeup fall short, the most dramatic part of that for the monkeys is when they kiss.
Yes.
Because they can't flex those lips to kiss.
Well, so it was kind of like not like a real kiss. It was a fake kiss. It was like So it's like they seem to very deliberately do something different from the way humans would, because they're not humans. And I feel like that was a reasonable way to overcome the limitation.
Sure.
Right. I guess is what I mean. And they didn't have them. Okay. In the Tim Burton one, they walked more like apes. And in the newer films, they walk like apes. But in this, you think, okay, if these have evolved from where they were, where we are now, to where they would be, 2,000 years in the future, that they would have evolved to being more upright characters, walking more like us and not more chimp-like is in the other films. So I think they still had a little bit of that action, and they still had that movement, and it worked really well.
Well, how far? So the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it came out in 2011. That was about now. How far into the future did the other ones go?
It's the last one that takes the biggest evolutionary jump, and it's about, they say like they don't say how many years, and there's been chat, there's like 300 years in the future from war until the latest one, Kingdom, but they say multiple generations. So they're still not in the last film. They're still not
human-like. Years.
They're not, they're not like this. But this allowed so many generations and so many years of eons to go by. We as humans, how long did it take us to evolve to being upright from being walking more, I guess, chimp-like?
Right. But ours was more of a product of our environment and quote unquote natural, where this was like, seeded basically with some manipulation. So that doesn't necessarily, that I don't think you can compare.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You don't really know.
And they had to be more human-like, because for us to accept the fact that, this is what would happen or could happen, is the evolution of humanity, or the evolution of simianity. No, forget that. I take that word back.
Well, I thought, in the original film here, if they even had that discussion, or if it was just, we're going to walk upright or did anyone say, hey, maybe there should be some, whatever? Because I remember watching the special features for the Mark Wahlberg version of this. And I keep saying the Mark Wahlberg, that's just association.
That's a good enough,
because he didn't make the film.
Yeah.
No, you can go Tim Burton or Mark Wahlberg, but
Tim Burton. There you go.
Yeah.
But they chose to have them be more ape-like, walking on their hands and all that stuff, and chose to have that just because they thought it would be more realistic in the film. But I wonder originally if they even had that discussion, or if that's just how it was. Nobody talked about it. They just walked upright like humans would. That would be interesting to know.
Well, they weren't 100% upright. There was like a little bend.
A little
and when they were
right.
when they were near tables, they would walk, have their hands where they're leaning on their arms and hands a little bit. So it was I think that feels like it was very deliberate, and it wasn't entirely a normal upright, and they had a little bit of a gait. But I thought they did a good job with that.
It was subtle enough. It was subtle enough that you could still see that they were evolved from primates. Let's see what else. What other questions? What other things about the film that
I don't know.
kind of
I just want to
interests
say that Cris has a little more spark in his eye. There's something a little extra there with this podcast recording that wasn't there before he got married. So I just want to point that out.
Probably my wife.
Yeah,
We're officially married. I can say that now.
For how long, Mr. Christian Fox, have you been married now?
I guess 11 days.
11 days.
I don't know how many hours yet.
You don't look a day over 10 days newly married,
Thanks.
my friend.
Yes. To all our listeners, Cris just recently married the love of his life a little over a week ago, and we're so happy for him that beer's on me.
My question is, did she watch this with you? Did you say that? At the beginning of the show?
No, we were thinking about it, but she got me into Scandal, so I was like, can we do Scandal?
Okay.
So we watched a bunch of Scandal. We've been going back and forth between Scandal, NYPD Blue, and Supernatural. So it's been fun. After that Davey Perez interview, I was kind of like, let's give it a try. And I think she started it before. So we've been doing a lot of that.
Very good. Well, we have chatted a lot about this. Is there any other feelings that you want to express? Thoughts about it? Or are you just going to say, well, and the other thing is I do have a book here that I purchased last year at Trek Long Island, a nice place that we went to. And it's on Rod Serling. And now I want to look for the sequence about Planet of the Apes and see what was, if there's anything there about the discussion and what came about, why it was written the way it was, how it was done, and so on. And if there's there, I'll share it with you folks. But
it is based on a book that was
it is based on
written.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
But I just want to say, Steve, by means of closing out the show and kind of final thoughts is, I love this film as a kid, and watching my kids react to it was so much fun, which tells me it's still got something.
Yeah.
It still is intriguing. It's still interesting. And, my kids have been really lately, I've been introducing them to some older stuff. They are now brand new I Love Lucy fans. They laugh their faces off watching I Love Lucy and in all its black and white glory. And so they'll watch older films with me occasionally. But that didn't they didn't make a single comment. They're not quite as old as your son is, Adina, as Frank is, who just will do that more naturally anyways. But I really love this film. I think it holds up in a lot of ways. There's some ways where you go, oh man, that's, that effect didn't hold up, whatever. And it's got the charm, or maybe charm's not a good word. In some places it is, but it's definitely has some cliches from that time period that are cringeworthy to us now. But I tell you what, it's one of the classic all time, I believe, sci-fi films ever.
Well, yeah,
and if you haven't seen this, And even though we spoilered or whatever word we're using,
What do we say?
the heck
Spoilering?
out of it.
Spoilering?
Spoilering. We've spoilering. Or in this case, we've spoilered.
Go watch this film. If you didn't hit stop and to watch it, go watch it still. It'll still be worth it.
And chances are people listening to this who haven't seen it probably already knew the spoilers. And I think it's the young people that just haven't had that enough exposure to know yet. But someone like my age who hasn't seen it, I'm sure has got to know. I feel like has got to know. Anyway, worthwhile seeing, worthwhile watching.
Definitely.
And I'll say this to all the young kids: do not spoil yourself on movies. Because as I get older, there are very few spoilers left, I think, in the world. Obviously, there will still be some, but there's like some classic ones where I'm like, I wish I hadn't known about the spoiler before seeing the movie. So if there's a movie that you know about, that you know there's a spoiler, don't spoil yourself. Just watch it.
How many people have gotten punched to the nose for spoiling The Sixth Sense, huh? Why did you tell me that? No, oh man, now it's like
that's one that was spoiled for me when I was like 7 or 8. I'm like, I'm not watching that, and now I can't ever. I'll still watch it probably, but
one of the great all-time movies,
frustrating,
where the someone gave me the spoiler at the end of it, ticked me off. I would have never seen it coming. Was Titanic.
Really?
Okay, moving right along here. I'm totally kidding. Wow, guys, lighten up a little bit. Okay.
I thought he actually did survive. I mean,
I'm talking about the ship sinking.
Oh, the ship sinking. Oh, well, I never saw that coming. I mean, they said it was unsinkable. Who would have thought that something like that could happen?
By the way, real quick, there is a brilliant kids book about the ship that came to rescue, the first ship that got there to help rescue people from the Titanic. And that story of that ship, I can't remember the name of it, of course, in this moment, but is a fantastic story worth looking into.
Interesting. Yeah, considering what they came upon and what they found.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing what they did to get there and the effort and heart they put into rescuing people. So anyways, that's not Planet of the Apes.
That was a big tangent.
That was one of my biggest ever. I just want to point that out.
And we appreciate that because we really have been staying on target through most of this episode. I mean, we did mention once or twice Star Trek, but that's okay. Thank you.
Stay on target.
Thank you.
There's too many of them. Stay on target. Wait
a minute. They blew up the Death Star at the end of the film? I never saw that coming. Oh my gosh. Well, folks, then I guess I can say, and there you have it. And no one ended up.
Death Star blows up.
Yeah,
I don't think it does.
Yeah, but it gets rebuilt because if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, Steve. I promise I'm done interrupting you, good sir.
That's okay, because I'm going to end up saying that no one here has ended up acting like a monkey's uncle or flung any poop in anger in our discussion. We hope you've enjoyed this discussion of film that has spun a franchise that is now building momentum. Again, all Planet of the Apes films are on Disney Plus, and if you are listening, Bob Iger, please give us a call. We'd love to be bought by you, and we know that a couple $1 billion, we'd settle. And if you have any thoughts on this film, this discussion, have any opinions that you want to discuss, please direct them to Facebook, to our Instagram page, or post them on your favorite streaming platform, or send them to our email address at the BIG Sci-Fi Podcast at gmail.com. We are, as always, going to say we are proud to be part of the Trek Geeks family of podcasters, where all our current and prior episodes are available for you 24/7. If you wake up at 2:00 in the morning going, I can't sleep, oh my God, you know what I need to do? I'm going to listen to episode number 32 of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. Please do, because I don't even remember what that episode was. And with that,
how do I?
I leave you with these parting words, as I always do. Look to the skies, live long and prosper.
And test the water quality.
Always.